Oh, hey there, and welcome to Something Borrow, episode 5, last one of the year. We've got Mark Grist, we've got me, we're doing something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and something Christmassy? So, those of you who have been before will know the format. If you haven't, this is a format I started during lockdown. I did it online, and it is so much nicer to do with other people in the room, so thank you for providing the atmosphere. And it is me and a special guest taking it in turns to share something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. And this month, I've challenged myself to also try and shoehorn as much Christmassy content in as I can. So, my something old is a Christmas poem I wrote when I was 25, so yesterday. And I would like to share it with you. It's slightly longer, but my something borrowed is really short, so I think on average we're fine. And I'm going to introduce it by reading what I've written in the book before it, because I've spent a lot of time on it. This is after the previous sort of heartwarming poem. I think we can all agree that would be the perfect place to finish. But it's my book and I can do what I want, so this final poem is about Christmas. As a fan of birthdays, I was thrilled to be asked to write a Christmas meditation for the radio a few years back. In many ways, Christmas is the ultimate birthday, not just of Jesus Christ himself, but also of the German tradition of Feuerzangenbowle, which involves melting a rum-soaked cone of sugar into mulled wine. What is not to love? My mathematical interpretation was to look back at my first 24 Christmases on this planet as an advent calendar of memories. I still love to perform this during the festive season, so now, in the ultimate Christmas present to myself, I can do that from my own book, rather than hastily trying to piece it together from scraps of paper beforehand. God bless us, everyone. Ready for 24 years of Christmas in one slick poem? Fantastic. 1. It's not realizing it and yet being the center of attention. 2. It's being more excited about the wrapping paper than the presents. It is a box. It is a rocket. It is a fort. It is the thought that counts. 3. It's just about grasping the concept of December. 4. It is loving it at the time but still being too young to remember. 5. It's the school nativity, where you don't have to be the star to be the star of the show, where a tea towel on your head and a dressing gown combo will somehow define you as wise. 6. It's writing Christmas cards for everybody in the class, because they sell them in packs of 30. Why wouldn't you want to be friends with everyone? Being too young for classroom politics. Being too young for worrying about how many kisses is too many kisses. A simple happy Christmas printed in the middle, their name at the top, yours on the bottom, and you can blitz them in a night. 7. It's Uncle Steve dressing up as Father Christmas. It is Toby's mum ringing up your mum upset because you told him about Father Christmas. It's James McClinn telling you 10 years later you also told him about Father Christmas. It's finding it hard to believe you found it so hard to believe when it came to Father Christmas. It's wanting to put the record straight today for all the younger listeners, the truth about Father Christmas. It's sometimes he gets my Uncle Steve to help out when things are really busy. 8. It is a joint Christmas and birthday present for you and your brother. That is 4 presents worth of present in one in the form of a PlayStation 2. Applying a similar concept of sharing to your daily half-an-hour time limit. The first half an hour is Joel's half an hour, I'm just helping out. The second half an hour is my half an hour, but I can't do it without him. The third half an hour is, we're just looking for a save point, Mum. Twice your current lifetime away, you will ask Joel about presents growing up, and this will still be the one that you both remember. 9. It's discussing when you're allowed to get up instead of when you have to sleep. Can we come in at 6? How about 7? Settling somewhere between the two. Arriving at 6:01. Stockings in arms at the end of Mum and Dad's bed. It is a bit of a squeeze now. You're both bigger than you used to be. Taking it in turns with Joel to go through the classics. Selection box, chocolate orange, chocolate gold coins, pants and socks, shower gel, Satsuma. Even when you were told you are too old for Santa to keep bringing you presents, you will do stockings for each other and make sure all the above are still included. 10. It's wearing shorts every single day of the year while you still can. Because when you start secondary school, you will be forced to wear long trousers against your will. It is Friday afternoon. Rolling a giant snowball the entire 30-minute journey home, knee claps glowing so red Rudolph himself would be jealous. 11. It is year 7 taking snowball fights to a whole new level. 2 pairs of gloves, one for warmth, one for craftsmanship. Ringing up school to check in advance if it's been cancelled for a snow day, hearing the other school's pipes are frozen, maybe ours will be the same, organising a meet-up in the morning on Ealing Common either way, arriving sodden into period 3 French. Pardon. Sorry I'm late, miss. There was traffic because of the snow, which is technically true. It's her saying she taught your brother, so she knows for a fact you walk to school. It's somehow still not getting into trouble because snow rules. 12. It's deciding to go to the cinema as a family on Christmas Eve, not knowing this will become a tradition you stick to more closely than any mince pies or mistletoe, that you will go through that Napoleon Dynamite phase for slightly too long, that you will cry your eyes out watching Where the Wild Things Are because you two just want to make everyone okay. Your brother will laugh at you in the kindest possible way that somehow only brothers can. 13. It's Beth saying she respects your music taste, but it is seriously lacking in Christmas songs. Making you a compilation of all the classics, including Mariah Carey, Destiny's Child, and the Tweenies. Informing you that S Club 7's Never Had a Dream Come True is still a Christmas song because it came out during November and it was snowing in the video. 14. It's having to get to church early. Mum's been asked to do the Christmas morning sermon to go out live on the BBC. 5 minutes before broadcast, you're asked if you and Joel wouldn't mind moving from the front row. His afro is blocking the people behind. And your new Napoleon Dynamite vote for Pedro t-shirt could be interpreted as a political message. You do not want to make a scene before Mum goes up, but make it your mission to get in the background of as many shots as you can. 15. It's doing your paper round on foot when it is too icy to go by bike. Being up and awake and getting to make the first footprints in the snow. Texting the mates you know will check their phones before looking out the window. It's Chris telling you that if you post a note through each door in early December, you're more likely to get a Christmas tip. Photocopying a handwritten message and filling in the gaps for a personal touch. To the recipients of the @ thank you for the honour of letting me deliver your papers each morning all year round. In these cold winter months, it is nice to have something to get out of bed for. Lots of love, your faithful servant and daily bringer of news, Harry. 16. It's going to midnight mass the night before so you can have a lie-in on Christmas morning. Checking the order of service for carols as soon as you sat down. Fingers crossed for O Come All Ye Faithful because that's an absolute belter. Hoping for anything other than Once in Royal David City because 1, it does not complement your vocal range, and 2, you and Mum refuse to sing that all Christian children should be mild and obedient. 17. It's going with Mum to help pick out a Christmas tree. Last year, Dad was in charge and it ended up as a pile of sticks in a pot with some baubles on top. He called it postmodern. Remember to pack your gloves to carry it back across the common. Past the point where in as little as 3 weeks, these trees will begin to be discarded. The same point you and your mate Oshin will stop on the way home from the pub one night, wondering if that pile of fur is as soft as it looks. It's not. But with trousers tucked into socks and coat zipped all the way up to the top, arms crossed, you leap back into it regardless. As you lie amongst the scent of pine, talking about nothing for hours, there is a freshness to this that you will look back on for many years to come. 18. It's finding out your Uncle Steve has an old snowboard in the garage. If it settles, we can definitely give it a go. It is North Devon turned North Pole. It is less than 2 inches of snow. It is after you, bro. It is broken collarbone. It's calling his then girlfriend, now wife, and her thinking it is a joke. It is reheated Brussels sprouts after a trip to A&E. Watching Joel struggle to open his presents with only one hand. Laughing in the kindest possible way that somehow only brothers can. It is using this as an excuse 1 week later to get out of a New Year's Eve gathering, where the invitees include 3 other couples, you and your ex. saying, I would love to be there if I can, but when my brother might need help, he can only open things with one hand. Escaping awkward embraces as the clock counts down to midnight. Choosing board games and hootenanny with bro and then girlfriend, now wife. It is not quite what I expected as a plan. It's still the best New Year's Eve I have ever had. 19. It is doing Christmas together for the first time as a couple. She bought you a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it because you have a poem about dinosaurs. You bought her a large tub of peanuts because her brother is allergic to peanuts. She said she can't have them at home, so when she goes out, it's a bit of a treat. You have no idea how well you will eventually get to know each other, especially given that you will break up 1 month later. You will not be able to stop wearing that t-shirt. You will question whether or not the peanuts were a good idea. 20. It's grandma starting a competition on mum's side of the family. Who can make the best stocking / bauble / placemat / tree? We gather around grandpa's bed so he can judge. People have spent months on this. Mum will always knit something. Dad will try and subvert the idea of what it is we are supposed to be making. Uncle Darren's will involve some kind of welding. Me and Joel will have made ours in the car on the way there. When youngest cousin Carrie wins, Grandpa will be accused of favoritism. It's hard to know who is joking and who isn't. 21. It is living in Germany and realizing they do Christmas so much better than we do. Learning a Schoko-Werkzeug is literally just a spanner made out of chocolate. A marzipan kartoffel is genuinely a blob of marzipan decorated to look like a potato. Learning that Glühwein really does make your insides glow. Feuerzangenbowle is the same with extra rum and fire involved. You will try and bring this last tradition home with you. Misinterpreting the ratios will leave Great Auntie Pauline passed out in front of the fire. This Christmas, you will speak more words to her in German than you have in English for the last 3 combined. The next year, her gift to you will be a suitcase for your travels that will keep going on adventures even longer than she does. 22. It's a second chance to do Christmas together for the first time as a couple. She buys you some dinosaur-shaped chocolates because she knows how much it winds you up being given gifts for a poem you wrote 5 years ago. You buy her anything but peanuts. 23. Is volunteering to cook vegan Christmas dinner this year because of Mum's treatment. You've never cooked a regular Christmas dinner before, so you may as well give it a go. It is paper hats and Christmas crackers, and there is no turkey in sight. Celebrating on the 23rd this year, you tell yourself it is okay to break some traditions. Last year was your first Christmas morning away from Joel. This year will be your first Christmas day away from Mum and Dad. It's being especially grateful for family this year, and ever thankful you have grace to hold your hand. 24. It is taking the time to go back through every Christmas you've ever had, realizing in amongst everything else changing, there has been a constant throughout. That you remember the presence of individuals more than individual presents, except for the PlayStation 2 you and your brother got when you were 8. It is 1 year since Mum's been given the all clear. It is a unanimous decision that this year's film will be Star Wars. It's still dairy-free, but maybe the occasional pig in blanket is asking Grace if she remembers the peanuts the same way you do. No comment. It's your niece not realizing it and yet being the center of attention. Knowing as she turned 1 this year, she still has everything ahead of her. Knowing as you turn 24 this year, you still have everything ahead of you. It is praying that she won't grow up to be mild and obedient. It is promising that you will be ready to answer the call from Father Christmas, in case he needs Uncle Harry to help out when things get really busy. It's still keeping your fingers crossed for O Come All Ye Faithful on Christmas Day, but packing your headphones in your bag for the journey home just in case. It's being grateful for your blessings, just as Chance the Rapper said. You've made it through this far. Are you ready for what's next? Thank you. Thank you so much. I thought Ed was giving me a standing ovation, but he was just checking the camera, but I still felt it. I appreciate you. Wonderful. Everyone feeling Christmassy? Fantastic. In which case, could we welcome to the stage my special guest? He is a fantastic poet. I've known him for a long time, and it's always a joy to see him and perform alongside him. Please welcome to the stage the one and only Mark Grist.
Thank you.
So, are you up for doing something old, and then we'll have a chat?
Yeah, that sounds cool. Hello, nice to see you. My name's Mark. I'm really pleased to be here for a number of reasons. One, I've known Harry for like quite a while. We first met in Edinburgh when we were in the Hammer and Tongue Slam. We competed during the weeks. We'd each won individual days. It was quite a big deal, I think, at least for me when I was there. It was my first time going to Edinburgh, and I heard this guy, Harry, he's really good. On the final, I turned up, and he was really good, and I did my best. And we drew exactly, didn't we? And we got into we had to do another piece, and I think we had to share a bag of... Yeah, that's what we got. And it was really tense. So that was the first time we ever really met each other. And so, yeah, really pleased to be here to get to come down and see you guys. And also because I live in Peterborough and I get out of it for a night. Yeah, I know, right? So I don't know if anyone has been to Peterborough before. I think some people go to Peterborough to like change train and go somewhere else. Some people go there to get like a passport, because you've got a big passport centre. And some people just go there to die a little bit inside. That's kind of me when I first moved to Peterborough. I worked in Peterborough for 5 years as a secondary school English teacher, and I spent most of my time in the pastoral kind of part of the school as a head of year as well, working with teenagers who were having lots of like difficulties in school. Eventually, I was given a year out by my headmaster, because he knew I wrote these poems and things, and he said, "We'll keep your job open for a year." It was amazing, really, and try and be a poet. If you fail, like a failed poet in the English department's kind of an interesting character to have anyway. Like, why not? We see how it goes. So that's what I did, and I left my job 12 years ago, and since then, every year there's just like enough to keep kind of traveling around and working with young people in schools all around the world and stuff. So if it's okay, I'm going to read you a poem. I spent a lot of my time working with young people and like helping departments trying to work with young people that are finding things particularly challenging. And one thing that really frustrates me, I guess for old, I'll do this, is like, I think sometimes we kind of look down on young people, or we think they're soft in some way, or that as we get older, we're like somehow tougher or more resilient. And I feel like perhaps COVID was incredibly tough for young people in a way that we've never experienced, and it kind of frustrates me, that kind of thing. So this is a poem I wrote about it, and about people talking about this kind of snowflake generation. So I've called it Snowflakes, if that's all right. It goes like this. I hear a lot of guys my age, and older too, who like complaining that we're going down the drain, our values in decline. They say we've ruined what was great, and it's our under 35s to blame. This snowflake generation, all these younger, softer types, always eating avocados and kicking off online, how they whine without compassion, always thinking they're so special, piping hot opinions like steam out of a kettle, displaying such fragility, so sensitive and raw, shaped by trophies for competing that were given out on sports day. And I get it, some young people, they are lacking in compassion when they're cancelling or dragging, or there's someone they're attacking. And when I go online these days, I do see guys get savaged, but it's not like that's all carried out by one small demographic. I've lost count of the times online I've seen older folks retweeting, frothing full of rage over things they don't agree with. A bunch of adults blow up every day, just raging, seething because someone's worn an outfit for a faith they don't agree with, or a mother doesn't want to hide her baby when she's feeding, or a cubicle can now be used by anyone to pee in, or a business changed something small just to account for someone's feeling, or someone made a sausage roll that doesn't have some meat in. I don't want to hear all these drops whenever something unimportant is just changed a bit. You know, the kind that keeps Piers Morgan on our screens. We watch him blow a fuse because Daniel Craig's been papped while out and wearing a papoose. We've got Ben Shapiro, Fox News, Jim Davidson is online. So I don't think petulant behaviour is purely for our younger types. It's not to do with age. I just think we've got a problem now with how we all communicate, because the internet has changed us. And what we want, we're giving it. Our comments being gathered like they matter and positioning ourselves as right. So if we don't like something, we can live with it, or we can feel emboldened to embark upon a hissy fit. And the left, and yes, our younger ones at times have both ascribed to this. But online, we've been flooded by 1,000 types of whiny gits. Perhaps I'm one, I'm whining too. But what I really find amiss is calling someone snowflake. It just perpetuates this childishness. And I've worked in schools, I've tidied up when kids call each other names. It doesn't get much done or make anyone feel that great. I don't think these snowflakes are the ones who are afraid. The young people I meet these days, I think they're pretty brave. And I compare it with this freak out, fragility, hysterics, at anyone who's brave enough to challenge a perspective. And I wonder then, was Martin Luther King a snowflake too? Or Rosa Parks, Malala, what the suffragettes went through? Did that make each of them a snowflake? Or this label, is it used to comfort our own fears as we dehumanize our youths? I think that might be true. And it seems a little tragic When a 16-year-old girl, let's say, who cares about the planet, gets hounded out on Twitter by a bunch of adults, panicked, shouting, "Snowflake," it's so strange. I just don't understand it. To any future snowflakes listening now, this world is yours to change it. When you do, some others will want to call you names for it. It's how it's been for centuries. The one thing you can trust is that change will come for everyone. In time, it just does. And some will feel concerned by this, will want to pull you down. But take your values, run with them, dig in and make us proud. Your path is hard compared to those who heckle from the crowd, but we'll adapt. Some rules should change, and some statues should come down. Be proud of your compassion, your progress, your brilliance. Those who call you names, they're merely lacking your resilience. You are not weak and brittle. You will not bring us doom. The differences you bring will help the human race to bloom anew. And I can't wait to see what's next. Change is coming soon. And we need it, just like we need more adults in the room. Cool. Thanks very much.
Absolutely stunning. Yeah, my related question for something old is going to be that we are something old because we've known each other for so long.
Quite a long, a long time.
And I do remember that slam. Another fond memory I have from gigs we've done together was we were both booked to play at Camp Festival, and there were lots of, big name acts there. Kaiser Chiefs were headlining, lots of excitement. But rather than go and see those, Mark said, "If you've got a couple of hours spare, because I've got a game about bean farming," and he brought out this game called Bonanza, and I was there with Chris, and we played it, and it's one of the greatest festival experiences I've ever had. So I thank you for that. But also, we played it with you for the first time, and you just introduced us to your house rules as well. So you, as well as trading beans, you were trading sort of future promises and naming rights to your children. And we just thought that's how you have to play. So when I was reading through the rules later, I was like, oh, we've really started in at the deep end. But I loved it.
I'm really pleased. Yeah, I'm a big board game and card game addict. Should I tell the story about Lucy and I've been going out? So I'm married, been married for a few years now, and when Lucy and I first got together, we've been going out for about 3 weeks. And I said, "Do you want to come to a board games competition?" She's like, "What is it?" I said, "There's the Risk World Championships." And it turns out there's I really like Risk. I used to play a lot when I was younger. And in near New York, there's the Risk World Championships. They've never had anyone outside the state of New York enter the Risk World Championships. And I thought, wouldn't it be really funny if we went over and I went and did that? So I persuaded a magazine to pay for the flights. If I wrote about competing as the UK entrant in the Risk World Champion. This is I can tell you this is crazy. So we flew over there, and we've been going for about 3 weeks. And it was quite full on. And Lucy thought we were having a really fun time in New York, but we were kind of just in a hotel lobby with lots of guys that didn't really want to talk to Lucy. And you get set up on these tables. If you played Risk, you get given your kind of army, and you're given a location, and you have to play 4 games in the first day. And I played my first game, and I lost really badly. But then they all thought I wasn't very good, and so I won the second game, and then I won the third game, and I came second in the 4th game. And so I made it onto the final table. There was loads of people playing on this game of Risk, and I was in the final table the next day. And I turned up, and there'd been a meeting of all the Americans, and said we can't let a Brit take the trophy back. And one guy, called Dan, was like, "I'm not down with it. It's not sporting. I'm not going to form an alliance with you pre-game and everything." It was already full on. And so I started the game, and I got really badly kind of ganged up on. And Dan was forming a protective barrier around me. And he was like, "I don't even want to win." And they couldn't really take Dan out without being weak enough that someone could take that. So I was surrounded. This is crazy. So I was live tweeting the whole thing as well, and sharing it. And I was in the Congo. That's where my troops were. And I was talking at length about the Congo will never fall. We're going to get this and everything else. And some of my tweets got shared by an actual kind of civil uprising in the Congo. Yes. Yeah, it was some of these getting shared because they were there's this guy and he's getting all this traction. He's talking about this stuff. It was really, really weird. That was quite weird. But yeah, I lost. I got taken out and then and lost. But yeah, me and Dan still keep in touch.
Come on.
Yeah, it was a really nice guy. Yeah, that was really nice.
My other question before I do another poem. I'm having a lovely time.
Sorry.
You mentioned in the Snowflake poem, you mentioned calling names, and in terms of something old, from teaching, you went into rap battles and sort of paved the way for poets going and being bullied by rappers, which I followed you. But my related question is, what is your favourite name that you've been called in the world of battle rap, or your favourite thing that's been said against you? Because, I mean, you will agree with this, it's such a creative art form, and yet it can feel really brutal.
So I started battling way back in Peterborough. We used to do it secretly in my suit that I taught the students in. So I went down on a Friday night to a local nightclub. I know, it was a really bad idea. I went to a local nightclub. We talked about what I'd call myself as a battler. I wanted to call myself Agatha Christie. But the students didn't know who that was. And they were like, you should call yourself Crystal Meth. And I was like, I can't call myself that. What about, and we agreed I'd call myself the Count of Monte Cristo. That was that was my name. I can't even remember, but that tournament was the first thing that was really quite full on. I think that my first opponent, I think he said I looked like a constipated James Corden. That's quite good. A wrinklier version of Gordon Ramsay and like Gollum on steroids. He's a very visual learner. I figured it at the time. Yeah.
Incredible. I battled Ogmios, who we both know.
Yeah, what did he say?
And he was famous for his sort of research that he would do in his opponents, like the level of private investigative stuff. And he had found my dad's blog, which was like documenting like an alternative worship service that we'd had at the church. And so he sort of used that to go in on me, sort of playing Christian Jenga. But he kind of built up to saying, I've brought 4 mad goons to attack you. You've brought John, Luke, Mark, and Matthew. And it was really absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Ogmios is great, though. Really good.
You up for me doing something new?
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic.
Love it.
Last month, my Something Old was a poem I wrote. Last year for Advent, I was asked to write a poem on the theme of comfort and joy, and I wrote this list of things that brought me joy at the time. And then the act of writing that list I found really cathartic and fun. So I decided this year to do the same thing again. So this is Things That Bring Me Joy, 2023 edition. Wi-Fi passwords that clearly haven't been updated in years. While I am sure We Love Coffee 2019 was true when it was created, it's now a relic of a simpler time. A time before I had heard of COVID, ChatGPT, or Suella Braverman. Going into any Turkish barber and asking for the special. Sometimes it involves a relaxing hot towel. Sometimes it involves having your ear hair singed off by a flaming pendulum. Once it involved having lolly sticks dipped in molten wax shoved up my nostrils and being told not to scream. Deciding to reframe the fact that I often wake up in the night as just being so good at sleeping I get it done quicker than everyone else. The Bear, Miss Marvel, Marvellous Miss Maisel, sex education, asking friends in America if they have sex education over there, forgetting to explain that we meant the TV show. Following this up with the phrase, honestly, it's amazing, you just fall in love with all of the characters. Nkuti Gatwa, Bassam Youssef, Greta Thunberg, Ben Stokes, sunflowers, getting my first tattoo this year of a sunflower, having my legs shaved in order to get a tattoo of a sunflower. That when I was on crutches, my friends organised a trip to the local gardens just so I could hire a mobility scooter and pretend I was in Mario Kart. That when my Facebook page got hacked, my friend Mark booked us a trip to a Russian banya. That getting thwacked with eucalyptus leaves by Russian men in felt hats and Speedos was somehow exactly what I needed. Buying a bird-based board game for Grace for her birthday. Staying up till 4 a.m. playing it by myself. The Mission Impossible films. that the combination of joy and grief in my recent poems has led to me being described as the Barbenheimer of the poetry world. But it was me who described myself as that. But I am hoping it catches on. Celebrating my 1,000,000,000th birthday. Having nerdy enough friends to know that they have done the same. 31 years, 8 months, and 7 days-ish. That my poems have found new life on TikTok and Instagram. That I only have 5 friends on Be Real. That 2 of them are married to each other, so it's mostly just the same scene from different angles. That someone has named their pet snake after me. That snake is called Harry Snaker. That I forgot that this had happened until my neighbour reminded me, and then I got to experience it all over again. That I thought I used up all my favourite things last year, but this year's list was easier than ever. As if gratitude is a muscle you can flex. Perhaps that is why they call it a practice. That whether or not that is true, I will keep practicing. Getting a new duvet. My local queer coffee company. WhatsApping my friend Helen. Watching things with people who care about them. Caring about people. Letting people care for me. Still crisps. Still fireworks. Still Margate. That I am still here. That I can post this online and do it all again next year. Password, We Love Joy 2023. In terms of something new, I'm very excited about your new project. Do you want to do it first and then talk about it, or do you want to talk about it first?
I can maybe talk about it first because it might be. This is going to be weird. So if it's okay, I was trying to work out what to do for something new. The newest thing for me is a picture book. So for years, I was just performing poetry and putting things on YouTube. I kind of, when I started out, I thought I would never actually have any books. That was going to be my shtick. I was going to be like, I'm not going to put anything in a book. But as time's gone on, I've kind of realised it would be nice to have something out there to share and kind of put out. So what's great about a picture book is there's only one poem as well. So it's kind of, you only really have to kind of like get one poem that works out and is sorted. So it's okay. I feel a bit weird, but I might share that.
I've
not shared it to any others before. Is that all right?
Yeah. Come on.
I thought about this when I was working a lot with actually a lot of the battlers that I kind of met and like the battle scene, because the battle scene is actually really good at talking about positive mental health. I think a lot of the time there's been some really good events talking about it. But I have found a lot of the time, particularly like boys, might find like crying's not a pleasant experience sometimes, and it might feel a bit weird. And some boys might feel that maybe you can't cry or you can't be brave while you're also crying, and girls as well, particularly. But I think it is kind of quite a masculine kind of thing. So I kind of wrote this little story, and it's all kind of rhymey. And it's all about this guy called Milo. Milo is a rhino, and that is the kind of level of rhyming in all of this. And so Milo decides. I kind of try to find a way. I found it really interesting trying to write about it because actually it's a very, it's tricky to write about it in a way that doesn't get quite sad and quite like difficult and quite heavy. So this has got a movie star in it that's going to kind of keep it the energy up. It's also got a there's a little bit. Some people in the reviews, it's done pretty well in reviews. But my favourite thing is some people have clocked there's a little bit of a romance angle in the story that goes through as well. So some people quite like that. Yes. But yeah, if it's all right, it's a roller coaster ride where Milo is going to decide he's never going to cry ever again. And then we'll see how that goes. Is that all right?
So excited, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, this is Runners Don't Cry. It's illustrated by Chris Jevons, who's amazing. He's done an awesome job. This is going to be about Milo. And there's going to be a little cat called Pickles. It's pretty cute. Things might get tough with Pickles, but we'll be all right, okay? We'll be all right. All right, I've read this out. I had some people read it out to their kids when I was there, and they got to the Pickles stuff, and some of the parents were looking at me like, is this going to be okay? And so, we'll be okay, hopefully. This is Rhinos Don't Cry. Goes like this. There's a little Milo there with his little bike. Rhinos Don't Cry. This is Milo in his bedroom, and this little cat Pickles is going to be super important as well. And it goes like this. This is Milo. Milo's a rhino. He likes to do all sorts of rhino-y things. So weird doing this. He likes writing. Look how good friends they are as well. Really kind of cranking up the emotional connect. He likes writing and climbing and banister sliding and mountain bike riding. He paints and he sings. And goodness me, Milo loves being a rhino. But there's one small problem. Rhinos don't cry. Rhinos don't cry? Are you sure? Is that right? Well, that is what Milo discovered one night. He and his mum were both watching TV, and his hero, the movie star, Spyco McCree, was digging up treasure when pirates attacked. They'd taken the lot and would not give it back. That is when Spyco said, I am a hero, and I'll tell you why. Bad things might happen, but rhinos don't cry. From that moment on, Milo decided that crying was bad, like Spyco, he'd fight it. I am a rhino and rhinos don't cry. I am a rhino and rhinos don't cry. But then something awful. Mum said, oh no, Pickles got out and hasn't come home. Milo felt sad, little paw prints and everything. Okay, we'll get there. Milo felt sad. It was hard not to cry. But he thought about Spyco, and he knew he should try. That morning, he sat with his mum in the kitchen and helped her make signs that said, Pickles is missing. Each sign had a picture and number to call in case anyone had seen Pickles at all. When he thought about Pickles, Milo felt funny in his head and his chest and his little round tummy. And that funny feeling did not go away for all of the rest of a very long day, as Milo and Mum put each sign they got on fences and lampposts and windows of shops. Outside the cinema, with just one sign left, Milo looked round for the place that was best. Here, he thought, putting it by the side door, when he heard a deep voice. Now, what is that sign for? Milo felt panicked, all of a muddle. The voice was so loud. Was he in trouble? He turned to say sorry when who did he see? Wow, the great rhino movie star, Spyco McCree. It's my favourite picture, actually. I really like the lights in that. Milo was shocked, didn't know what to do. This was a movie star, one that he knew. He showed him the poster he'd made about Pickles, but just as he did, his eyes started to trickle and he tried. He tried. He really, really tried, but he cried. Milo cried, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried. A fountain of tears poured from his eyes. And as Milo cried, what did Spyco then do? Well, Spyco McCree began to cry too. How red his cheeks went, how much his tears poured. He would have come first at the crying awards. What are you doing? Asked Milo, confused. I'm crying, of course, said Spyco. Aren't you? But you mustn't, said Milo to Spyco McCree. You said so. I heard you last night on TV. You are my hero, he said with a sigh. And we are both rhinos. And rhinos don't cry. Ah, Spyco frowned. That film. Yes, I know. Well, the thing is, that was made a long time ago, before we found out how important it is to cry sometimes, and not just for kids, but for adults as well. It's how we were made. In fact, you know what? I think crying is brave. So Milo and Spyco both let their tears pour as Milo's mum found them beside the side door. Spyco's suit jacket was certainly wetter, but after he'd cried, Milo felt better. They all shared a smile. It's a little bit. Maybe. Then hang on, what was that? Meow! That sounded like Pickles the cat! Pickles, yelled Milo. Did you hear us crying? She's on that pirate ship. That's where she's hiding. Goodness, said Mum. Let's fetch her quick. Quick, I'll get her, said Spyco. But he couldn't fit. There's a bit of a self-reality there thing going on. But Milo was small, and Milo was fast. He rescued Pickles. She was safe at last. Mum cuddled Pickles. Spiko said, Milo, you are my hero. What a brave rhino. They laughed and they cried and were dancing about until it was time to head back to the house. And on the way home, Milo could tell they were crying because they were happy as well. And Milo felt great. You just can't deny that it's good to be brave and it's okay to cry. Cool. Thank you very much.
It felt like we were in a sort of group story time. That was so.
That was quite intense. That was quite intense. If there's anyone who works with really, I'm used to working with teenagers, so I find it like I bundle through and I don't point out things. I'm learning things all the time about how to like deliver it and stuff. But yeah,
incredible.
Thank you. That's really been helpful to get to try it out.
And I'm sure when you wrote it, the end goal was to perform it to sort of 30 adults in a cafe. But other than that, have you seen kids read it, or have you got a response from them? Because obviously that's quite different to performing live. It's there and then you don't.
Yeah,
you're not there when they digest it as such.
Yeah, and I go really fast. So I'm used to going like really, really fast, but you have to kind of go slowly. The thing that's so interesting about it is you're writing a script for someone else, and you're writing a script often for someone who's probably very tired to read out, and also they might not be very confident with their ability to read what's on the page. For me, I feel a bit like what I want is for an adult to pick it up, and maybe they're nervous about reading a book to a young person.
Yeah.
But then when they read it up, the size of the fonts are deliberately shown, everything, so you get the rhythm as it goes through, and it's like you get to pull some cool skateboarding tricks, right? As you're kind of reading it out, and you're flipping these ollies and stuff as you're reading it, that you maybe didn't think you'd be able to do when you picked up the book.
Yeah.
If I can get parents to feel like that, or like anyone reading to feel like that, then that'll be really cool. So I like the game, and it is a game. I see it as a game. I'm trying to work out how do you keep that flow going. That means we get active images on the panels, but also the person reading it feels increasingly confident with themselves and being able to read for their kids. That's kind of the idea.
Definitely. Yeah. From the children's authors that I know, the absolute peak is World Book Day if someone dresses up as your character. So I would love to see a crying rhino.
I had someone do that once. I did. I have a very short poem for kids. When I'm finishing this, I'm in primary school. The last poem, I can read it now, but like they just was the thing, and they'd read it before I go in. So I have a poem about oranges. So I kind of often say like, there was a kid I asked once, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he was like, I want to be an orange. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So like I wrote a poem about it that goes, if I was a fruit, I'd be an orange. Oranges get to have fun. You hang out most days on a tree with your mates, and the sun always shines on your bum. Your shape doesn't have to be perfect. You'd be fresh as the rest of the crowd. You'd never be spiky. Just roll around politely, enjoying yourself. If some say you're too loud or lacking in class, none of it gets through your skin. Just chill in a bowl, feeling juicy and whole, twice as bright as the light you let in. You know, and that's how we kind of finish the session. But I turn up, and a little girl dressed as an orange.
Yes!
And I was like, hey, that was cool.
Incredible.
Yeah, that was really nice.
I think the closest I've come is I dressed up as a falafel myself, based on my own poem. No one else was doing it. I thought I should. Yeah, for me, doing something borrowed.
Yes, yeah.
On Saturday, I went to see Rob Orton at the Tom Thumb. He's one of my absolute favourite poets and people, and he is someone who started off in the poetry scene and now does stand-up comedy, but is very poetic in that. And he's got a poem that mentions Christmas. My nephew is at the Christmas tree tapping the baubles. What colour's that one, Joseph? He looks around and up at me and says, orange. Wow, yes, that's right. He has learnt what orange is since the last time I saw him. What have I done? What about this one? Blue, says my dad. I look around at my dad and say, yes. My dad smiles. He knows what colours are too. But he likes to keep his hand in. I point at one and say, red. Grandson, granddad, and uncle, united by colour and Christmas for a few special moments. Are you up to doing something borrowed?
Yes, yeah, okay. I work with a lot of young people in different schools, and I spent a lot of the time during those first kind of 2 lockdowns getting up between the hours of like 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. and just running workshops for children in China and Indonesia and South Korea, and it was amazing. For me, it was like really exciting and to get to work with them. And when we all kind of came out of the lockdowns towards the end, I was able to pop around and meet with those students. And we put a book together of the poems that they kind of wrote, because the idea was they couldn't kind of see each other, but maybe we could share their work. So I thought I'd maybe just share a piece from that, if I could. They're like pretty... There's so many. I was tempted to read you the one of the, some of them are really funny. One is just called "How the World Will End," and the last two lines just go, "Your flesh, your bones will burn into flames until there is nothing left of you." Is the last is the last two lines. In fact, the last line before that is, "Your internal organs get eaten." Like it's full on. There's loads of great little poems here. I'm going to try and read one that I just thought was really interesting. So there's a student I got to work with called Sua. She was studying in Beijing, and so English is not Sua's first language, but she's a very dedicated student, and she found it really weird that I would rhyme, like when we kind of like were playing with language, and she was trying to get her head around rhyming, and like she was like, "Why do you do it?" Because it's like really false. Like I don't know why would you rhyme? It's not the best thing to say at that point, right? And I said, that's interesting. I guess maybe you get something more back than you lose by putting in a rhyme. That must be why like people do it, right? So what do you get back? And we talked about it, and she said, well, it's kind of quite satisfying or hypnotic. And I said, okay, cool. So she kind of said, she said to me, I've written a poem and it rhymes. And I was like, oh, okay. And you think the first rhyming poem, you're like, okay, let's strap in, let's see what we got. And this is what she wrote. So it's called From Apple to Tree, and she talked a lot about the pressure of family and how where she grows up, essentially your role in life is very much dictated by who your parents are, and it's very difficult to kind of like, that idea that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and that she doesn't want to kind of be bound by that. And she read it, and I was just really amazed. It goes all over the place, but I just think it's really cool. So this is Sua's piece. From Apple to Tree. They say apples don't fall from the tree very far. If that was true, I'd be smooth without scar. With the things that I do, I'd feel no remorse. My fruit, just like trunks, would be sandpaper coarse. If I were reborn, then I'd be a peach. Pink blossoms so pretty, but so out of reach. The peach tree would teach words that would be like a preach, and I wouldn't think of myself as a leech, but a fruit, or maybe a lemon tree's good, since it doesn't hide the acid in your wood. It's pleasant, sure is, the unpeeled yellow, but what's inside would hardly be mellow. But apples, God, they crush so easily. Left out too long, they turn brown queasily. They taste good, sure, until the seed shows. I didn't want poison, but how you dispose of your own cyanide, rooted deep in your bark. Do apples grow brown because they're just as dark? I can't help but think you branded me well. Externally, for quite a lot I would sell myself, except I can't do that to others. Pain is passed on, it chokes, it smothers. The apple doesn't fall far, but I will roll as far as I can. I must get away whole. And peaches, cherries, bananas, and pears, behold, look upon me, the apple declares. I got away free, won't you agree? And all I gave up was some small dignity, but in behold, my flesh has now got such mold. The efforts I spent, it took till age old. What can I say, but old habits die hard, though it's not me, but perhaps the trees in the yard. And that's why, my dear, I don't want to be you. I don't want to think about me, who you grew. In fact, if I could, I would forget about you, in fear that I'd end up becoming you too. So here is my lesson, straight from the core. Rotten trees bear rotten fruits you abhor, but it's not the fault of the fruits they're attacked. In fact, the root of the problem is solved as a quick, neat fix with an axe. I just thought it was like crazy, like, yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah, that was Sua's piece. And yeah.
Do you have a favourite age to work with in schools? Because I know you do primary and secondary.
I tell every group they're my favourite year group.
Sure.
When I started teaching, I had great advice, which when you start teaching is like, you're not there to be liked, you're there to be respected. Don't smile till Christmas, all that kind of stuff. When I go in for a day, I have to be liked. Yeah. Like, I've got no respect yet. Like, so I kind of, I often say, particularly in primaries, but I love primaries more than secondaries now. Yeah, okay. Year 5 is probably my, year 4 or year 5. Yeah.
I remember having done loads of stuff in secondary school, where, like, especially first thing in the morning, you're like, I need to like bring the energy, like wake them up. They've all got their arms crossed, but I'm going to fully go for it. And I remember the first time I did an assembly for like reception year 1 and year 2, and I had a poem which involved them like shouting along. and I went too far the other way. I was like, can you guys all shout? And then they didn't stop. And all of the teachers in the room were just looking at me being like, what is this guy doing? And I was so used to trying to like raise the energy in the room. I never knew I would have to try and like bring it down. I'd be like, and then like finally got it down. I was like, okay, let's do it again, but try and just sort of shout quietly. And that is not a concept they understood. And just
if I went to year 9 and said, hey, could I read you a poem about my dog? They'd be like, what? And if I go into year 4, so I go, can I read you a poem about my dogs? They're like, yeah, can we sit? Show me the picture, And it's just like, let's go. It's just really, really good.
The other thing, when I started in primary school, was like, I basically went through my poems that I've got like 5 or 6 that feel more appropriate for this age group. I'm not sure how that's going to last an hour, but basically after you finish a poem, someone just puts their hand up and tells you that like their sister's seen a dinosaur, and so you just sort of chat for 10 minutes
when I went to, we were both at the Fringe once. I took a free Fringe show. It's my first time taking a show for kids called Down with the Poetry King. Yes. It was all about, they were going to teach me to be better, and I became like an evil ruler of poetry, and I said, you won't only have to do things my way and everything. We kind of laughed about how the poetry world actually can be sometimes. And so I was doing the show, and I had loads of poems in it, and it wasn't great. And second day, I was like, this is kind of bombing. I'm going to have a really bad Edinburgh. And I thought, do you know what? Should I just chuck out like half the poems, and I'll only perform like 6 poems. I was performing like 15 poems or something, because I thought that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I go, let's play some games. We'll just put some little games in, and we'll do all these little bits and pieces and stuff. And the show was so much more fun, because like we were really kind of like interacting and mucking about from that point on, and it was just much sillier. So yeah, I think that's, I think I definitely learned that. Like, stop trying to just.
If in doubt, ditch the poems.
Yeah, basically, stop reading poems. Only making the show worse. I did. I got halfway through. I was like, I'll cut one more, and it still improved it. Yeah.
I've got something blue. If you're up for me finishing on it. During COVID, when gigs weren't possible, I put on an art exhibition with my brother. He's an amazing graphic designer, and it's trying to do stuff together. And we looked at the idea of constraints and putting kind of limitations upon yourself to force yourself to be more creative. So things like writing a poem that went through from A to Z and what that might look like, and then did univocalism, so the only vowel you were able to use was the letter I. And then I found this one that was really obscure, but I knew would work well visually, and it's called Macau constraint, where you're not allowed to use letters that either have an ascending bit, so like the letter B is a bit going up, or a descending bit like the letter Q. You're only allowed to use the sort of squishy letters, as we call them. And so it works amazingly written down, performed less so, but I am here. But I just, as I was writing it, I got so stuck in that headspace that I would just start to see these words wherever I could. And I remember I was on holiday with Grace, and I got really excited because the word coronavirus was very long, but it still fit in that. And I think it was at a time where it didn't feel good to get excited about coronavirus. But this is called As. As iconic as Romeo's romance in Verona. As ironic as a race car's reverse maneuver. As unseen as a raccoon's mascara. As curvaceous as orcas. As raucous as a macaw's caucus, or maracas in macarenas, or a murmur in a vacuum. As cavernous as music minus Nina Simone. As cancerous as science sans Marie Curie. As anxious as Moses minus Aaron. As morose as Sonic minus a run. As unceremonious as microwave rice. As nonsense as anosmia. As inane as insomnia. As insane as Monsieur Macron in a river. As overrun as a nose in a sneeze. As unconscious as a masseuse's snooze. As ravenous as a raven's nevermore. As raw as a necromancer's encore. As on course as crows. As on course as snow. As sure as coarseness causes erosion. As sure as Casanova was a womanizer, as Caesar was a Romanizer, as sucrose is in macaroons, as warm cocoa cocoons, as summer sees us swim is sun, as 7 minus 6 is 1, as umami in miso, as memories in Nemo, as a connoisseur's assurances re vino, as seems zone, as seems so, as a rose is a rose is a rose, as crimson as arson or Mark Overmars, as communism, arson, or Marx over Mars, as massive as Uranus, as suave as Cervatus, as ace as Venus or Serena's service, as serene as a Mancunian oasis, as evasive as nuance in Eurovision, as naive as a manicure on a man in Crocs, as scarce as resources in Samwise's mission versus Sauron or Saruman's orcs, as severe as Vesuvius's venue insurance, as unanimous as vicars in communion, as masses amass en masse in mass, as voices in unison, as vows in a union, as excessive as caviar on venison, as venomous as enemy sea anemones, as amorous as meze on a mezzanine, as enormous as an acorn's ascension, as common an occurrence as assonance in verses, as cinnamon in Xmas, as cream on eczema, as wariness in news, as weariness in use, as room in a roomy verse, as newness in our universe, as wow, as now, as rare, as ruinous, as nervous, as numerous, as insecure, as onerous, as awesome, as erroneous, as voracious, as vivacious, as vain, as vicarious, as unaware, as various, as curious, as us. Cheers. I kindly want to do that because I know you've played around with form a lot. You once did a univocalism in a rap battle.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. So univocalism is when you're only allowed to use one type of vowel for the duration of the poem. I often do it when I work with young people, actually. I think that you have some really, get some really good lines. I had a couple of girls did like a really murderous poem about these cows. It was like, they had a line that was like, no words, only moos. which is a really good line. I thought... and they're often quite short. And I thought when I started rap battling, I thought I'll try and take Oulipo constraints and use them in the rap battle. So when I battled Mosprob, and I thought Mosprob, I used Mosprob don't look so good. Mosprob not from no hood. Mosprob from posh talk. Tory boy crotch dog rocks. Hop socks moon boots crop top. Bopster Bono Bros Moby only slowly. So Mosprob's moved to Bob so grossly. I was doing all this kind of stuff. I did it for a whole round. Thank you, but I did it for a whole round. and everyone, honestly, everyone there is just going. What's going on? But yeah, I found that kind of stuff really interesting. Yeah. I like this the games, isn't it? I think the games they take away a lot of fear. I think when you're trying to create, if you trying to fit a constraint.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved this. Are you up for doing something blue to finish?
Yes, I have. So if it's okay, I'm going to perform you a poem I can't perform in schools because it's got swearing in it. I guess because we've got to go for blue. Yeah. So if it's all right, there is a swear word in it. I'm only using one swear word, but I'm going to say it, I think, about 24 times. It's for anyone here who ever worries that maybe your poetry isn't how it's supposed to be, or you've ever heard someone kind of say that you can't. I was at a competition once. A guy was judging it. Was like, this can't win. It used the word imagine as the first word in the poem. It can't win. And I was like, what? There's this stuff like that. The guy was like, you can't put a footnote in a poem. And I was like, oh, you're definitely getting in this poem, mate. So I've mixed all this stuff in. And this is my view on it, or it's called "It's Still a Fucking Poem," and it goes like this: if it talks of things you don't believe in, it's still a fucking poem. If the meter isn't even, it's still a fucking poem. If it isn't all that intricate, it's still a fucking poem. If you don't feel all that into it, it's still a fucking poem. If it's popular, too jocular, if the rhyme scheme gets on top of you, if the metaphors are propping up an argument that's sloppy, or it's written by some children, it's still a fucking poem. Graffiti to a building, it's still a fucking poem. If it's scribbled at a workshop, it's still a fucking poem, or by someone you've not heard of, it's still a fucking poem. If it won all the awards, if it left you feeling bored, if it's half as good as yours, it's still a fucking poem. If it isn't asking questions, isn't quite an argument, it isn't all that liberal, it's not attacking Parliament, if that heading has a footnote, if the ending sort of spirals out, if it will not be remembered by the world 100 years from now, it's still a fucking poem, right? It's still a fucking poem. It's still as much a poem as any piece you know of, and it's not how you would write it. But it's still a fucking poem. And you don't think that you like it, but it's still a fucking poem. And you can cry that it's appalling, but it's still a fucking poem. And you aren't that important, right? You're not a fucking poem. You're just a fucking poet stuffed with too much guff from poems. Just leave it to the rest of us, or go and write a poem.
Come on.
Thank you very much.
Incredible. Thank you so much for coming. We will be back in the new year, but in the meantime, give it up for all of the open micers. Give it up for Ed on the sound and camera and Live, Laugh, Loving. Give it up for Will for having us and the fantastic drinks. Give it up for yourselves and give it up for the wonderful Mark Grist. Happy Christmas. See you next year. Cheers. Bye.